This week, I delivered a training in a room full of entrepreneurs, high six-figure entrepreneurs, seven-figure entrepreneurs. They were not property people. They were e-commerce founders, agency owners, consultants. And I had been asked to get up and teach, which was not on property. In fact, it was on sales. And about 60 seconds before I got up there, I thought, what the fuck? Why is the woman who has built her entire name in property sourcing being asked to stand up and talk about selling? But the reality is very, very simple. Sourcing and sales are the same job. And most sourcers who are stuck right now aren't stuck because their area is shit. They're not stuck because there's no luck. They're not stuck because there's no stock. They're not stuck because they don't have any investors. They are stuck because they're running a sales business and they don't know it. So I have my own mentor. He's a very, very, very high level business mentor. Very, very, very well known. Very, very, very expensive. But he runs his own in-person event for some clients in his program. It's a mixed room, mixed industries, but all very, very high level. And he had asked me to teach the principles behind the sales aspect of my business. Now, he didn't ask me because I'm a property person, okay? But he asked me despite that, because the way we sell in property sourcing transfers into any industry and every industry that was in that room. Now, I'll be very honest, there was a version of me a couple of years ago who would have felt like a total fraud up there. I've never come from a sales background. I've never had a sales job unless you count my stint at the Debenhams perfume counter when I was 18 and at university. Other than that, I come out of finance. I was a financial analyst for the New York Stock Exchange. Spreadsheets were my game. But since I started sourcing in 2016, I've raised over £5 million of private investor finance. I've built relationships with agents who have handed me stock other people have never seen. As a result of that, I've made a lot of money through property sourcing. And you don't do any of that with a spreadsheet. You do that because people decide to trust you. And in a nutshell, that is sales. So really, I've actually been selling for a decade and calling it property sourcing. And if you're listening to this podcast today, you've probably been doing the same. When I got up to deliver my training at the event on Tuesday, I stood up and I delivered it with, look, sourcing is not a property business. Sourcing is a sales business that happens to use property as the product. You don't own the houses, you don't own the finance, you don't own the refurb, but what you do own is the relationship on both sides of that transaction. It's your investor relationship and your agent one, and you get paid for making both of them say yes. So if you're waiting for the perfect postcode to make you money property sourcing, you have completely misunderstood the assignment. The job in property sourcing is to get both people to say yes on purpose repeatedly. That is sales. Now, you probably want to get pen and paper for today's episode. You're going to want to make notes of the 9 principles that I'm going to run through here, how property sourcing and sales are the same thing. If you don't have a pen and paper, you can listen to this back on replay. Number 1, the first sale isn't the deal. It's actually the agent. So the sale doesn't happen when the investor pays you the fee. It actually happened weeks, months in advance on the phone with an agent who had absolutely reason to help you. You are asking a professional with a legal duty to their seller to bring you property opportunities before they hit the open market. That in itself is a pitch, because you have somebody on the other end of that call who is very guarded, who is very standoffish, who has objections. You will also have a close and you will have a follow-up sequence, because hardly anybody says yes on the first call. Most people try to win the agents over by being liked, by bringing them coffees and donuts and schmoozing and sleazing them. Wrong! You win the agents over by removing the risk. So you're not actually selling friendship. What you are selling with the agent is the certainty of completion. And that is a value proposition. And the sourcers who understand it never run out of stock. The second thing, you're not selling a discount. You're selling confidence. If you've been following my content for any period of time, you will know my thoughts and my stances on below market value. It is a myth. It's a fantasy. And it's the easiest thing to teach a new sourcer. And it also happens to be the number one reason most sourcers are failing. A discount is a feature, but investors buy an outcome. I'm going to say that again. You're trying to sell investors discounts, but investors are buying outcomes. If you lead with the numbers and the discounts, you've made the entire conversation with investors about price. And when you focus on price, you've made yourself a commodity. And commodities in the market compete on being the cheapest. And the race to the bottom is not pretty. Like, there is only so low that you can go, and it's zero. But a real sale, when you're dealing with investors, is positioning yourself in a manner where you can say, I know your strategy. I understand your strategy. I understand what your risk appetite is. I have a handle on your timeline. And the property that I have here to present to you serves and ticks all those boxes and serves that goals. Here's why. Here's what could go wrong, and here's how we've got it covered. None of that is about a discount. It's all about confidence. It's the same house, but it's a completely different sale. The third thing that you need to take into account is that you need an offer, not just a deal. This is the one most property sourcers skip completely, and it is a complete and utter straight sales principle, straight out of How to Sell textbook. Nobody buys a product, they buy an offer. A deal on its own is just a fucking spreadsheet with a postcode. So an offer is everything that is wrapped around it, how it's presented, what's guaranteed, what happens if it goes wrong, what the investor gets that they can't get from the sourcer down the road. If your entire pitch is, here's a house, here's the numbers, you don't have an offer. You have a fucking link to Rightmove. I want you to understand that. Think about the whole package, the numbers, yes, but also what's the exit plan? What's the communication plan? What are the options? The fact that you've already thought about what could go wrong before they had to ask, that is part of your offer. That's what makes a potential investor stop dealing with any Tom, Dick and Harry sourcer and choose you. So I want you to think about building exactly what it is that you offer within your sourcing business before you do anything else. Number 4, always go for demand before supply. Always. Now, when I started, if I found a good property opportunity, I would get excited. I would put an offer in with absolutely nobody lined up behind me to buy. And I had to go back and pull out more times than I would actually like to admit to. Not only did I lose the deal, I lost the agent relationships and a hell of a lot of credibility with that particular approach. Because what I had done, I had built supply houses before demand investors. Every failing property sourcing business does this. They go with the product first, the deals, and the buyer second, investors. Good salespeople do the complete opposite. Find out what people want and then go and get it. That is the investor's first approach that we take in our own property sourcing business. It's the same approach we take with the guys we coach inside the 6-figure sourcing blueprint. You know exactly who's waiting. You know exactly what they have the money for. You know exactly how fast they can move, and then source against a very warm, real list. Do that, and then you don't need to sell the deal because they've come to you. They've told you exactly what it is that you're looking for so that you know the moment you find it, you've already built up the demand for it. Number 5, volume is not optional. And this is one of my favorites. And it's the bit that nobody wants to hear. Sales is a numbers game and sourcing is no different. Not every agent call turns into an off-market relationship. Not every relationship turns into stock. Not every deal that you find turns into one that is bought. If you're only making a handful of agent calls a week and you're only speaking to a couple of investors a month, the math doesn't math, people. No matter how good your script is, the math is not mathing. The sourcers who are consistent, the ones who found some secret shortcut, no, they are not. They did not find a secret shortcut. They are the ones who protected the volume. They set a number of agent conversations. They set a number of investor conversations every single week, KPIs. And they hit those KPIs every week, whether they feel like it or not. You must put the activity first because the results will follow it. You cannot expect the results for the work that you did not do. I'm going to say that again. You cannot expect results for the work that you didn't do, and the work is the activity. Number 6, track it or you're just guessing. If we know that volume is the whole thing that makes this business go round, then tracking is how you know if it's actually worked. Most sourcers only measure one thing. Did I get a deal this month? And that is the complete and utter wrong metric because it tells you nothing about the why. Was it because you didn't make enough calls? Was it because the agent said yes but investors said no? Was it because you had interest but you didn't have follow-up? I track the numbers of everything. Agent conversations made, warm agent relationships opened, investor conversations, offers made, follow-ups. When something's not working, the breakdown will then tell me exactly where, instead of me sitting there wondering if it's the market's fault. You cannot fix what you do not measure. That is not a sales cliche. It's the whole reason that some sourcers get absolutely no traction for a year and others don't. Number 7. The objections in sourcing and sales are identical. Every objection in this business is a classic sales objection. It just is. Send me the numbers and I'll have a look. That's somebody just politely telling you that they're not interested. Then you get the investor that says, I need to speak to my partner. Well, that actually means you haven't found the real decision maker. If they say, I'm not sure about the area, well, it's not usually about the area. 9 times out of 10, it's more about trust. If they say, oh, well, my money's tied up right now, that often means that the outcome that they were sold really just wasn't worth the inconvenience. Most sourcers at this point shirk off into the distance, and they will maybe discount their own fee just to try and get the deal over the line. The problem was never the information that you provided. It was conviction. And you can't hand somebody conviction if you don't have it yourself. If you do not believe in the service that you offer, why the would anybody else? Number 8, a particular favourite of mine, the money is in the follow-up. Almost nobody says yes the first time. Everybody stops asking after the first time. Deals die in that gap in between. Agent relationships die in that gap. One good call and then you go ghost for weeks. You never ring back, and then 6 months later you wonder why they don't call you. Follow-up is not pestering. It is your job. Build a sequence and work with it. A rhythm with the agents, whether they've got stock or not. A rhythm with the investors, whether or not you've got a deal. The sourcers who go from nothing to consistent fees are rarely the most talented. They are actually just the most systematic. Number 9, build a thick skin. Nobody warned you about this, but you will get ignored. You will get ghosted. You will hear the word no a lot. And if you take that personally, you will not last a nanosecond in property sourcing. And salespeople don't get a thick skin by accident. They have to build it on purpose by expecting no's as part of the maths. Every agent who doesn't call you back, every investor who goes quiet and turns into Casper the Ghost, that's not a personal attack on you. That's just random Tuesday. So decide in advance that you're going to have a thick skin, otherwise you're going to get knocked sideways. You just will. 3 things transferred straight from property into every industry sitting in the room. Be polarizing. Say what your competitors won't. Contrast is what makes you memorable. So if you know that you're out there and there are property sourcers who you know are talking, who you know are making promises on deals that just don't exist, call it out. Don't call them out by name, but call out what they're saying. Establish your credibility before anything else in the first few minutes, and invite investors to work with you. Don't sell. I never send an investor to a page to buy to work with me. I invite them to a conversation. Keep it premium. And the people who come through that are the highest intent people that you will ever speak to. This is important, guys. And this is a different type of episode today, but it's so important because so many people do not realize that, in fact, you're not in the business of property sourcing. You're in the business of sales and marketing, and you simply have a property sourcing label slapped on the front. You need volume, you need offers, you need tracking, you need follow-up sequences. And nobody's ever really told you about that. Listen, if this episode landed today, if it resonated with you, if it made you think differently, send it to somebody who's in the industry, who has been complaining about their lack of results because the area is not right and there's no stock. No, it's because you're not treating it like a sourcing business. Anyway, I hope this has been useful. We took a 2-week break. I was traveling with family. We are now back, raring to go. If this has been useful, drop me a DM on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook or LinkedIn. I read every DM that I am sent personally, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on today's episode.